Hey everyone, Denise here. I wanted to take a few minutes to go through a video this way, no cameras upside down or right side up, and figuring out if I'm on screen, nothing live like that. I wanted to give this to you either for those of you who have come to classes in the past for cards, or those of you who are thinking about coming. Now, what I did was in the file section, I put this. So Christina should post that soon. I'm going to wait to post this video until all of the changes have been posted on the website. There are a few more to go at this point. Forgive my lungs and coughing. The wildfire smoke is really wreaking havoc on my lungs. I'm just off the nebulizer, so I thought while I still have breath in me, let's try to get this done. So we have all of these changes now. And as you may have seen on the website, there are quite a few. Nothing scary. I think that they're all actually pretty good. You know, any good teacher reflects either at the end of a lesson, the end of a week, but more importantly, at the end of the year to see what did work, what didn't work, what, big changes they would make. You make little adjustments every day. You write notes for yourself every day. But at the end of the year is really where your main focus becomes, what policies worked, what didn't work, what could I do better at? And that's kind of where this brainstorming came in. This is the second year that we've done cards, but the first full year, I believe. So September, I always say, is the new year for school. So that's what we're going to do with September. So this does not affect June 17th. And I wanted you to have, again, all of these changes in one spot. I opted to post them separately in little snippets because I thought if I posted this, first of all, nobody would read it, and I don't blame you. Second, that you would miss some important information, but everybody can read just a little bit at once and not be overwhelmed. So that's the way I did it that way. And so I followed it like this when I made this printout. So let's go through some of these together then. So again, we started with what works and what doesn't. I like doing 4 classes. We like having that variety of, 12 cards. But the more product we use and the more people that are coming to class, which is great, the more time it's taking us, which is not great. So we've made a few changes to work that out. And one of them is that we're going to go down to 3 classes to 2 hours each. So the same 6 hours on a Saturday, but with 3 classes. So 9 cards potentially instead of 12 potentially. However, you are getting product to take home. So while you would have only done those 12 cards in class with seemingly for most of them no way to reproduce them at home, you're not going to have that problem this time. And I think that that's a big plus for you, for me, for everybody. So we kept the fancy cards because that's what I do. I do fancy cards. And then we did 2 other classes, which are more generic in nature. You can make them any sentiment you want. And then one is geared towards birthday, but it doesn't have to be birthday. So let's go through some of these changes. I mean, I've done this up here. So let's go through some of these changes. I'm just going to do them in the same order that they were posted on Facebook. They are not in any particular order at all. They're all just the changes, and they're just however I had them typed. But I'm going to do them in the same order. So if you are so inclined, you can go ahead and feel free to either hear me out, or you can fast forward to what you want. So change number 1. Again, like I said, 3 classes for 2 hours, not 4 for 90 minutes. We're still going to do about the 15 minutes in between. So I still recommend you bring your lunch, your snack, your drink with you. But again, you're going to be doing all the cutting, all the scoring, all of the stamping, all of the heat embossing, all of the regular embossing, with very few exceptions on your own. So that's going to not only cut down on the prep time for Bridget and Christina, but it also cuts down on your cost of the class, because whatever they don't have to do is just less money for you, because you're not paying for the time that it takes to go into creating the class kits. And class kits take a very long time to create, unless you've actually sat there and used one die with one machine over and over and over again for yourself to make the same cards in bulk. I think most people don't understand how how timely it can be for dies. Stamping can also be an issue, especially if you're newer to it. But we're going to take care of that. We're going to take that cost out, and we're going to have you do the cards from start to finish. So not only does that lower your price, but it also gives you the measurements for the cards. It has you actually physically do the card. So you can use that sample card in class to make notes on, to write down measurements, and you can reproduce it at home. There will not be a sheet with measurements on it for you. We're going to do that together in class. So fancy cards. I mean, as I said, we couldn't ditch that, right? So what we're going to do now is we're going to have a featured product for each month. So we have already ordered and in the shop, I believe, the Pink Fresh layered stencil that I had wanted for September. Now, the stamp is not required. It's a layered stencil. You don't need the stamp. It's not required, but Christina will have a few if you'd like to add that on to your class kit because you want the stamp to make different cards. I may be using the stamp in some of my samples, but the stamp is not required. What you will get in that particular case is the layered stencil. It is included in your class fee, which is now $35, not $25, to reflect the product cost. And you get to take it home. So you get to reproduce the cards. Now, the other thing for the fancy cards is they're always flowers. And I've always used Heartfelt Creations flowers. I'm going to say 90, maybe 95% of the time. You may or may not know, Heartfelt Creations has decided to close up shop. So they are not making anything new. Past July, they have two new releases, June and July, and those are both Christmas. And then they're just kind of selling everything and have been since their announcement a couple months ago. What happened last year before we knew this was I started buying some of the flowers that I use all the time as they had sales and as I had promotions that I was offered. So I bought a bunch of those stamp sets at a much cheaper price. So I can offer them to you being in the class for a special price as well as an add-on. So you won't be getting the Heartfelt Creations flower stamp to take home. You'll get whatever the product is, and we'll have 3 Spellbinders slimline dies for October, November, December. And we'll be using the flowers, but you won't be able to take the stamps home on that unless you buy them separately. So a separate price will be offered for you for that day. The supplies are very limited. They're whatever I have. So that'll be that. You don't have to buy it. There will be a class set, one or two, 2 or 3, I should say, to use in class. So everybody will have to share the I'm going to say 2 sets. If you don't buy the set on your own, and again, you're not required to, but you will be sharing at that point. You may or may not finish your cards, but you'll still be able to see the process. And I'm still going to do the videos for the cards, so you'll still have a way to do them and reproduce them at home. Card embellishments are now going to be a la carte. So anything like the pearls and those kinds of fancy things that go on the cards, that's going to be a separate purchase. Many of you have little rhinestones, little pearls at home that you can use, and we don't do them in class anyway because the glue is too wet. You don't want to transport them and ruin your card with that. So we will have them for sale separately, but they are no longer going to be part of the class, which again keeps the cost of this class down because, as you can imagine, a Spellbinder slimline die or a Pink Fresh slimline layered stencil, I mean, you can look up those prices. Those prices are not inexpensive. So the $35 for the class, 2/3 of that really represents the product. So everything else that we can take out to keep the price down, we will. So that class went up, but the other 2 are going down. So the bundle has gone down from $65 to $49. Now, yes, you are doing 3 classes instead of 4, but it's 9 cards instead of 12. And we didn't always do cards this year. We focused on product. So we focused on how to do things more than making cards from the things a lot of the time. But you can still do each of the classes separately. The other 2 classes, whatever they may be, will now be $15 each. There will be stamp sets that go with these card classes, but we were able to get them on only a limited basis, which means we have 8. We have 6 for the first 6 people that register, and we have 2 that will remain as classroom supplies that people who register after the first 6 can use in class to stamp they'll have to share. If you are one of the first 6 to register for one or both of these classes, then you will get the stamp sets. You will use them in class, and then you will also take them home. So you can reproduce them at home. Now, this also means, though, because the fancy class is limited to 6 people, unless we can get more supplies sort of at the last ish minute, that also means that the bundle is going to be limited to 6 people, because you can't have a bundle for 8 people if you can only have 6 people in, say, the fancy class. So keep that in mind. So the last 2 classes are now 15 each. The fancy class is 35, so that's $65 for a cost. And again, if you're one of the first 6 people to register, you get the product, the stamp set for each of those, and the fancy class gets the featured product. So you're taking home a lot more for that $49 bundle than you really did for that $65 bundle before. So not only is it probably a better deal and allows you, again, to make cards start to finish and recreate them, but it's also less money. So for the people who had said to Christina that 65 was too much money, this is now an alternative. And of course, you never have to take all of them. You now have 2 $15 options and the $35 option. So because of this, there's going to be, I'm on number 4 here, there's kind of no more waiting. That's not particularly true, because you still have to wait for the die cut machine unless you want to bring your own. If we're using a die cut, say the fancy class is in November. So unless you want to bring your own machine, then you'll be waiting for the machine. If you are not one of the first 6 people for the $15 classes, then you'll be waiting to use the stamp. If you do not buy the Heartfelt Creation stamp for the fancy classes, as I said, that's fine, but you'll be waiting to use the stamp, so you'll just be sharing those class supplies. But otherwise, you won't be. Now, there are no dies that go with the Heartfelt flowers or the stamps for the $15 classes. We do have a Brother scan and cut machine at the shop, which you can use if you have the mat and washi tape with you. I'll explain that when we get to the list. Or you can fussy cut them. But that's going to be the only way to really get those particular images cut for what you need. Free gift. There may be a free gift with registration. I heard that being floated around, and the possibilities include maybe an embellishment pack or a mini ink or just a little token thank you for registering for the class early. But it will probably be while supplies last, and it may not be, again, for the first 6, because 6 seems to be our general number, which is why we chose 6 items to have. So if the class grows more, as it has, on and off over time, it won't be everybody. So please don't think it will be everybody, and it will be limited when they are offered. So as I said, we're going to go from this change of assembling cards that are pretty much pre-done mostly for you to actually making the cards from start to finish. You are going to cut the cards, you're going to score the cards, you're going to color the cards, cut the cards, stamp the cards, die, whatever it is. I mean, we spent a whole year now on products and techniques. We did workshops on coloring, on stamping, on inking. So we've got a lot of background behind us. So I think we're ready to move on. I feel pretty confident in this. So with a few exceptions, as I said, you're going to be cutting all of the papers yourself in class. You'll get the papers and you will cut. Now, we'll cut them together. You'll be fine. You have your trimmer. If anybody needs a quick lesson on a trimmer, because not every card maker is used to a trimmer, and if you're newer to classes and we haven't really used a trimmer, you may be not so confident with the trimmer. So we'll do a little trimmer demo, don't you worry. But again, this is going to lower the price of the class for you. And again, the papers that we use will be provided, just not pre-cut. And again, this is part of like our September theme is from start to finish. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to finish the cards, but we're going to do them from the start to the end, not just you putting them together. So 8, I broke up into a few different ways. I'm going to sneeze. Hang on one second. I'm going to walk away because muting doesn't work. I have learned from my students. Sorry about that. If only I knew how to edit. All these years, I still can't edit. All right, so the changes for 8 I thought were pretty kind of big and related, so I broke them up. So again, 8A, Christina and Bridget just have to do less in order for these classes to come down in price. So that's great. We're also not going to focus so much on spending money for classroom supplies. We're going to have the classroom supplies you need for the class, whether that means the stamp or a die to use. But we're not going to focus so much on buying ink pads, because when you buy ink pads for the classroom, you're buying 8 ink pads. I usually ask for about 4 colors, maybe 3 times a year. So that's 24 ink pads. It's, if you think about it, it adds up to a lot of money for card classes. So what we have decided is what seems to be in line with a lot of other shops. I've done some research on this before I brought this up to them. And I did some research locally. I did some research with friends who are in the business, whether that's they own a local scrapbook store or business, or they run an online class thing, or they own one of the shops that we like, the product lines. And overwhelmingly, it seems people need to bring their own ink, that the stores are not providing it. So we're moving to that. You have your basic toolkit, which has been revamped, that we'll go through in a few minutes. And the ink that I use on the samples, I will let you know what ink that is, whether that's an oxide, a regular distress, maybe it's not a distress at all. You can use whatever you have. If you like a particular color combination that you have, bring it. Your samples do not have to perfectly match mine. I'll tell you what I use in case you want them to perfectly match mine. And I'm sure Christina will not mind at all doing an order, like, or a group order, to make sure that everybody has what they want for the classes, though we may do that just once, maybe August, to get it out of the way for the year, if I have the samples done by then. So we'll see how my summer goes. But you don't have to bring your inks to color with. You can still use the classroom inks that we have. Your choices are just going to be limited to those inks. And so just keep in mind that that's going to be the case. We've used a lot of classroom supplies. I bring a lot of my own supplies from home that I share with you to use in class, because that's what crafters do, right? We share what we have. But we are going to lower the cost of the class moving forward. So we're cutting out the items that increase the cost of the class. But I'm sure that you likely own many of these ink pads already, or something close enough to them that you are comfortable with. Again, there is no need for you to go out and buy what you don't have, unless you want them to be just like the sample. So with that, then, we have some changes to what your basic card kit supplies are going to be. Now, we've changed this a little last year, excuse me, and given our changes for the coming year, September, I mean, as a teacher, so the year is always September. This is what we're going to do now. So you have to have these things with you. If you don't have your trimmer, you're not going to really be able to keep up with the class if you're sharing somebody else's, and we don't have any available. Now, if a first time, never been to our card class before person comes, we will do our best to help them out with supplies for that class. But after that, we can't, because it has to be fair across the board. So everybody needs to bring a trimmer and a scoreboard, because you'll be scoring cards, not just card bases, but who knows what we'll be doing. So a scoreboard. We are no longer going to provide glue, because glue is a huge expense for the classes. So again, to lower the prices of the individual classes, you'll have to bring your own dry as clear glue, and the fine point tip you'll need as well. So whatever glue that you like that's dry as clear, feel free to bring that. Pop it on in your uh, card toolkit to go so you can grab it on your way out to class. Foam tape. You'll have to bring your own. It will no longer be provided. Same with pop dots or foam dots, whichever you use or you like. A bone folder. You're going to do your own stamping, which means you need your stamp blocks or a MISTI. Now, with a MISTI, you just need the MISTI. Without the MISTI, you'll need a variety of sizes. I will do my best to measure up what we're using for the fall and give you the measurements of the stamps. That way you can go through your acrylic blocks to see what you have and what you don't have. Or not an or. That's what I'll do. Sorry. We will have some blocks available for use in the store, but that's only with the classroom stamp set. So unfortunately, you won't be able to borrow one of the ones that's open, because if you were one of the six, you have your stamp set, you're using that. You're not using the classroom set because that's now reserved for the people who did not register as one of the first six. They're not sharing with other people who have the stamp. So you'll have to have your own. Some may be available for purchase in the store, but again, you'll want to make sure that you have what you need or contact Christina in advance. The other thing that I'm going to say is this slimline stamping block. The slimline cards that we do and the stamps, I think really from Pink Fresh, seem to be the biggest ones, and I use those a lot, seem to be about 9x4. The regular size MISTI does not accommodate most slimline stamps because it's only, I don't know, 8 inches on the inside or so, 8.5 inches. And many of these stamps are longer. So if you have the bigger MISTI, the 13x14, the monster that would take a 12x12 paper, that'll work. You can bring that on the days that we're using a slimline stamp. If not, then a slimline size stamping block as close as 9x4 as you can get. Doesn't matter how thick it is. It's just the width and the length. The easiest place I found is scrapbook.com, but I'm not sure if Christina was able to find any. So you may want to ask her. I am about to sneeze. Oh, sneezing. Apologies. So you will need that. You can, in a pinch, if it's long enough, use the outside of the MISTI. Measure it though. Make sure that it's long enough on the outside for you to put a clear stamp on the outside and use the door as your stamping platform, but the outside of the door. So you can try that as well. But of course, you only get one shot at it, and you might be able to see through it depending if you have to turn the whole thing over. So it's probably just easier to have one of these in your arsenal. All right, so a red foam stamping mat and a glass mat, because as we know, plastic tables are terrible for stamping. Scissors, micro tip scissors, because you'll be cutting and sometimes you'll be fussy cutting and you'll want those micro tip scissors. A non-porous craft mat, we've used those all along. Paper towels, because they are so expensive and we use them all the time, so that cuts down. A Memento Tuxedo Black ink pad, because you'll be doing all of your own stamping. You will need something to stamp with, not just to stamp on. So you will need to bring inks to stamp with. I'm going to suggest the Memento Tuxedo Black because I use that more than anything else, really. Though I will say from time to time that we're going to use the VersaFine Onyx Black and maybe a VersaFine Brown. And it really just depends on if we're heat embossing or if we're coloring with markers. So I use the Memento a lot, which is why I have it thrown on there. But if you have another favorite that you use to stamp with that's a black, then add that in. Just make sure that you can use it with alcohol markers. That way you're not stuck. Baby wipes, because you'll need to wipe off your stencils and your stamps and stuff in a pinch, not to mention your hands, maybe even your glass mat. A pencil, because you never know. I mean, if we're writing down measurements or if we're adding something in or if you're taking notes, I always have a pencil and I have never failed to use it when I make cards. So weird, right? But have it handy just in case. A pencil, because it's easy to erase. I am not a pencil fan, but in this case, you have to be. All right. Now I have to blow my nose. Yep, the unedited ghetto version. Sorry. but you all know me by now, so I'm not worried about it. All right, so the inks that are needed for class, I already went through that with you. Blending brushes or other ink applicator tools, because you're going to need to apply your ink somehow. So whatever is your favorite way to do that, you'll need to bring that. And then you've got this scan and cut mat. Now, the scan and cut that they have requires this mat right here. This mat is the only one that works, and it can't be a knockoff mat. Amazon sometimes sells knockoff mats. And what happens with the scan and cut, if you're not familiar, is that you will place in it, and it's not like a Cricut mat where you can put it in either side, or no, it's got an arrow, it goes in that way, it's got registration marks on the outside. And if you put it in, and if it's a knockoff mat or not the right mat for the machine, it will not accept the mat. It will tell you there's something wrong with the mat. Because for some reason, when Brother made these machines, and they have a few different models, none of the models have the same mat. There's no universal mat. Don't ask me why. I don't know. It's been a complaint for a long time. So you have to get this mat right here. It has to say this. Now, STD stands for standard, not anything else. There's a low tack one that one will work. I think it's the same here. You'll want the standard. However, I will tell you that this mat, the stick on it lasts about 3 times and then you're done. And it's expensive. It's like a 30 something dollar mat, which is why I tell you here, you're going to need washi tape, because you're going to have to cut down the size of your paper to put the washi tape so that it holds your paper in place, and it has to be inside the registration marks. So we'll tell you all about that if you decide to use it, but I will tell you this. If you decide to go that route rather than fussy cut in class, that's fine. But if we're using 5, let's say, flowers from that stamp set for your cards, you can only cut 5, because this thing, it's not a fast machine, and it is unfair for you to stamp 10 so that you have them for later, while somebody else is waiting for them in class for that day and now stuck online behind you while you do extra for home. Not fair. We're not going to allow it. So just so that you know, it's going to be stamp and cut, if you're using this machine, only the ones that we need for class and nothing more. That way it keeps it moving and it's fair for everyone. You can fussy cut with your scissors, perfectly fine. But like I said earlier, we're not getting any of the dies that go with these stamps. They're simply not an option for many of these stamps. So that's that. So that's unique. Now, we may add other things in. There will be some classes like that. I said you'll need the VersaFine, and you'll need, say, black embossing powder. And you'll need to bring that because you'll be doing the stamping and the embossing. It won't be pre-done for you. So those things will be added, like for this class you need. But these things here, you need all the time. The only exception is the scan and cut mat, because that is your option. The rest, all the time. I already discussed the bring your own ink. I already discussed that if you're one of the first 6, that you'll get what you have. Through some of my contacts, I have a friend who has a friend who has, they deal, I guess, mostly with like irregular stamps or seconds. Like they did when they stamped it, and this has been happening a lot lately, if you haven't noticed. They stamped it they made the stamp, and suddenly the word is spelt wrong, or the word is like the European way of spelling it and not the American way, and it's got to be like the right way. I'm doing air quotes for us. Usually there's nothing wrong with the image itself, from what I'm told, that it's really just something with the sentiment. And I have to tell you, for getting it added in for the sentiment for the $15 class and getting a stamp set plus the cards and everything else, I think it's a great price. I think that it's a great thing that you're basically getting it for free, if you think about it, because the classes have been $15, $20, and $25, and then that one little $10 basic class where we really didn't use anything. So for the same and then less amount of money, you're getting the stamp to go home with. So I'm not really concerned about an irregular sentiment here or there. I would rather have you have the image. If you're concerned about the sentiment, then just go with the fact that it is a gift with purchase, so to speak. So it is what it is there, because that's pretty much what we're going to do with this. I think, it's just that's kind of how it is. If you're paying for the class, we're giving you the stamp to go with it. So gift with purchase, which is why it's limited to what we have. Again, the class ones will be set aside, so you can take the class if you're not one of the first six. You just don't get the stamp set to take home because you missed the gift with purchase time frame, and the time frame is however long it takes for 6 people to sign up. Let's see here. I already talked about the bundle is limited because fancy class is limited. We talked about no more assembly line cards, and you're making the cards, right? And I'll continue with the YouTube videos to go from there. Yeah, and this is the big one too here. I am very happy to um, provide a quick stamping demo. We have a stamping demo that I did live in May. I'm sure we can get one up on Facebook. We did that on Facebook. I'm sure we can get one quick up on YouTube. We did a whole workshop on it, but I'm not going to stamp your stuff in class. I'm sorry if you don't like to stamp, but it's super easy. But I'm not going to stamp your stuff in class. I would be happy to show you how, but I'm not doing the work for you. You're doing the work. So just know that this is part of the new way that you're doing card classes. But again, it's super easy. And why wouldn't you want to know how to do this? Because then you could redo them at home. And trust me, I was against learning how to stamp for a long time. And it's a game changer. I can use it on my layouts. I can use it on my cards. I can do just about anything. And the world of embellishments has no end, really, when it comes to stamping. And then we already talked about the images. All right, so that's kind of it for the changes. The biggest changes to me are what you have to bring to class, what you are now expected to do in class, what we are no longer doing for you before class, and that it's 3 classes for less money instead of the 4 classes for the more money. And you get product to take home. So those for me are the big takeaways, and that's really what I wanted for you. Now you do have to again bring more stuff of your own, but I'm sure that you've got lots of it. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask, post them in the Facebook group. You can pop them at the bottom of this video, but I'll be honest, I don't always see the comments in the bottom of the video because I don't always troll my own videos on YouTube. So I would say the best thing for you to do is to post a question in the Facebook group, and we'll go from there. So I hope these changes make sense to you. I hope that you're excited about them. I am. I think it's going to be a great year for card classes. So I hope you're excited about them too. And I will either see you in a virtual class over the summer, maybe June 17th if you've registered for those classes, or hopefully I'll see you in September when we start these. See you soon. So here's the thing. I never know how to end these smoothly. My kids laugh at me all the time.